and what's not over the years. Those of you who learned about transvestites and transgender folks 20 years ago are now out of luck. Okay, we've moved well beyond much of the definitions and that kind of thing, so that when you say transgender, you're talking about a broad, a very broad. In fact, my interpretation of it is that would include the entire gay community. LG people are gender variant, not doing what is stereotypic for a male or a female in our society. So that's what makes it, in my terms, gender variant. One of the important things about today is that what we're going to do in our format is simply this, to answer questions, basically. So we thought that what we would do is introduce each of ourselves, give a little bit of our history in this experience, and then give you some questions that we have asked ourselves on this journey. We're not giving you the answers, we're just going to give you the questions. Okay, if you want to have other questions or want one of those answered, then you will have to ask it, okay? And I'm going to ask Chris to go first.
Thank you. Go, girl. And I'm even awake.
Oh, Lord.
All right, as you all know, my name is Chris, and I consider myself a woman, more specifically under the transgender umbrella. I'm a trans woman, male to female, transitioning.
You care to stand up. You care to stand up.
Do I care to stand up?
It's easier to hear you.
It's easier.
Your legs
All right.
look better that way, too.
Thank you. My name is Chris, and I consider myself a woman, and in the transgender umbrella, I'm a trans woman, male to female, in transition, which is a forever journey because we're never done transitioning in our lives. Couple quick notes. I knew at 10 years old that something was different, just didn't fit quite right. And at the point is there's all kinds of issues about education and stuff. Let me go hide in the seminary, but didn't quite like this. They kicked me out of there. At 54 years old, when I retired, I told Dawn about Chris. And 2011, at 61, here I am.
Are you?
Is that a living well, that was a couple years ago. But the question I had, and that was always there about what next, and was how and when do I tell Dawn?
I don't know if everybody knows your partnership.
Dawn is my wife, which we gladly have fun with. It's like, and let me introduce you to my wife, and they go, huh? But that's okay. Then we explain it. But that's for me. But
I'm the other half of the equation. My name is Dawn. We have been married for 40 years.
Wow.
We've known each other for 43 years. And she did tell me in 2003, and I was like, I was doing dishes. I turned around and there's this strange woman in my house. I didn't know who she was. It took a little while to get used to it. And there were some bumps. Yeah, we separated for about a year, got back together. And it has been nothing but fun and joy ever since. My question, when we decided to tell our whole family, was what will I do if our children don't accept this? What am I going to do? That was the question. So, my family has accepted it for the most part. I have one sibling who has not. While she was coming out to everybody here, I was being found by my birth family. So I was dealing with that and this all at the same time last year. It was fun. Yeah, that was it. Okay, that's it.
Hi, my name is Rob. I am a gay man who was invited to be in the ministry, and I happily accepted. And as I began to become involved in support of the ministry, I, of course, had many questions myself, and still do. And those questions range from how do you tell, if somebody is as the other gender they weren't born as, or is it okay to ask if I call you what pronoun, or how would you like to be referred to, or is it okay to ask if somebody's had surgery? All kind of weird questions that come up in my mind. So I haven't been shy as I've hung out with the group and learned to learn.
For most of you guys know, I'm Zach. I consider myself as a man. In the terminology for as transgender, I just consider myself as a trans man. I just recently had started to come to terms with myself, probably a couple years ago, because growing up for me was, I knew something wasn't right with me, even as a young child. So, I started my journey probably a little after high school. So, and a few of the questions that I've had to ask myself was, especially here recently, was how's my job gonna take it, and also how am I going to medically do all this?
I'm Jake. Many of you know. I had like everyone else, felt that I was different in my childhood, but there were so many circumstances that were different in my childhood. I didn't figure this one out until quite a bit later in life. It wasn't as though I hadn't had the thoughts many times and always rejected the thought as, well, you just want male privilege. That's why you want to do this. And I had not a clue what one would do if one said, okay, I think I'm a guy. Not a clue. So it wasn't until a friend in 2007 said, I'm a guy. I said, okay, what are you going to do about it? And he told me the process he was going to follow, and I thought, oh, I can do that. You go and explore with a therapist. Hey, I've seen tons of therapy, so I can figure that out. So my question for myself at that time was especially, well, one, how will Sandra, my partner of 28 years, take this? How will our kids take it? And, how will medical changes in my body affect me in the ages of and 60 and older? What changes can I make and what I can't make because of my age? So those are my questions. So now we'd like you to ask some questions, and we'll try to give you some answers.
Due to the recent death of Seward,
Liam,
how,
they don't all know that.
Let me.
oh,
I was just actually saying, I forgot.
I'm sorry.
And I am sorry, I forgot. Julia Seward, who was an assistant pastor here at King of Peace for a number of years under John Gill, was found dead this past week in her apartment. It looked like it was natural causes, but we're really not sure. And I just so apologize for not remembering it this morning to look that up. She had been going through transition, so it was Liam now.
Yeah.
So his memorial will be this afternoon at 4 o'clock at MCC in St. Augustine, Florida. So I would ask that you lift him and his family in prayer. They are coming down from Virginia. I knew Liam as Julia before Julia ever came here to King of Peace back in the old Mid-Atlantic district. So it was a little bit of a shock for me as well. So if you could just hold that family in your prayers, sure would appreciate it. Liam had undergone a hysterectomy just a couple of weeks ago as part of the transition. And we don't know if it had to do with that surgery, although the doctor had cleared him to go back to work. But did not show up to preach on Sunday or to work on Monday, and then they went to his apartment in county. So prayers for that family. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Gene, can we hold your question just a second? Because I made a mistake and forgot to introduce another member of the team, Jada, and she didn't get to do that.
I am Jada. I am currently transgender, male to female. Still considered male at this moment. but as a young child, I knew that I was different, and I've gone through a lot, different jobs, different places, and I now have a job that is very accepting to my lifestyle, and I'm just happy to, and I'm going to California in February to continue on with my procedures.
My question was this, I've known men transitioning to female and have had the complete surgeries, and I know how devastating that can be and how difficult. And I guess my question would be, how much of the I assume hormones and all this type of, how does that affect your health overall? Or does it have a major impact on it?
Yes, it does. Hormones are a major drug, we know this. And so you have to be, monitored by a physician. It has to be someone who knows what they're doing and the effect on the body. And one of my concerns for me was would it elevate my blood pressure. If I take too much, it will elevate my blood pressure, that kind of thing. So, there are precautions, and the hard part for this community is to find someone who is willing and knows anything about that. Most endocrinologists, who should be the ones who know this, won't touch it with a 10-foot pole, which makes me very puzzled because they've got to deal with hormones on a regular basis. But like, I just had blood work done, and my primary's going over it, and suddenly she looks at me and she says, "They used female statistics on you." Which sort of invalidated all of the blood work that I have, because now they have to use the male guidelines in order to interpret, especially my hormone testosterone levels. So.
And one quick question. I know the transition is difficult for anyone, but for me, the transition with you is more difficult for me because I knew you as Ann.
Of course.
And it is so difficult for me to turn that around. Much as I try, I still screw it up, as you well know.
I do too.
Is that offensive?
If you weren't trying, it would be very offensive.
Well, I'm very trying.
But there are some people that we know too. Thank you for walking into that one.
Okay, can I add something to what Jake was just talking about? Because the transition, you knew people who went from male to female, complete transition. However, due to many factors, that is not always the case. It's a case-by-case basis. The individual depends on health, economic, social. There's so many different variants of how far someone goes. There are some people who are living full-time who've never taken hormones because of whatever the reasons and what they're dealing with. But there's all kinds of different areas, but that doesn't mean they're to be considered any less than anybody else.
They still identify as male.
They still identify.
Yeah. But
Thank you.
Having said all that, and because it's the full spectrum, any trans can be the full spectrum. What do you do legally? Like you were referring to a doctor, and should it be considered male? How do you get to that point where, whether it's medical or legal, you can be considered the sex, the gender that you prefer? Or do you have to jump through certain hoops to have that happen at all?
lots of hoops to jump through.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, the biggest one is like a name change.
Name change, passing,
Yeah.
so forth and so on.
Name change and what?
Well, that starts off then you go through, your driver's, you start working on your documents sort of one by one by one. Changing my insurance to male, health insurance, was a concern. So far, I've been able to have female procedures as a male, and I haven't had any problems. I have a feeling it's because Medicare is overwhelmed and doesn't look at documents. But, I was kind of disappointed it wasn't a problem, but.
And does does every trans want that, or is that another part of, you make your own choices?
Part of the
for whether you
transgender
want them or
community
not?
also includes cross-dressers who do this
Right.
because on a temporary basis, part-time, or whatever you wanna do. But as far as the legal documentation, name change, you gotta go to court. Then you have to change your name on
Everything.
everything. Your driver's license, it depends on what state you live in. Florida just passed it a year and a half ago, that as long as you have a letter from your physician, they will change your gender marker on your driver's license. Your passport, okay, Homeland Security, your passport, same thing. However, Social Security will not change it unless you've had surgery, okay? And your birth certificate, it depends in what state you were born in. And there's only a couple states that will change it.
Texas is one of them.
Canada's is working on it right now. Everybody else is, if you have not had surgery and it has to be certified by a physician, then you
And
can't
it's
change it.
complete surgery.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily,
It's
okay.
what,
I just had a genital surgery done and got things changed around on my license and birth certificate.
I mean,
So it's almost case by case.
well,
It is.
the problem is, it is on case by case in terms of how you are going to manage your life once you've made this decision or figured out sort of where you want to go with it. The problem is that, let's say, that they were worried about voting, they are worried about voting. You present as a female, but you have nothing changed on your documentation. Is that gonna cause a problem? And apparently it has caused a problem for people. If Social Security doesn't change your gender, you apply for a job, I apply for a job as Jake, and my gender hasn't been changed on Social Security, they out me to my employer, who may have not a clue what's going on, but you get a letter that says it doesn't go. So that's where the discrimination and why it's so hard for so many people to get jobs and that kind of thing, because unless you've done what now they say surgery is sort of like the ultimate permission. Well, that isn't a good option or a necessary option, and no, not everyone wants it. So, I mean, it's like, you know, it shouldn't have to be. There should be a way to do this that you don't get caught in that conflict. You know,
Back in 1981, I was working for the Department of the Army, and we had our first trans employee in that community, and you can imagine there was a great deal of discussion. And the biggest issue was around the bathroom.
of course.
And ultimately, to calm everyone down, a separate bathroom was designated for that individual. And you started to talk on workplace challenges, and my question is can you share with us some of the workplace challenges that you're still facing every day?
I had recently, probably about 3 months ago, came out to my employer, because I had told somebody else that I knew outside of the community, outside of my workplace, and she was telling me, you know, it's time to really start, people are starting to ask questions and stuff like that. And for my employer, I ended up getting a letter. I was telling my therapist, in which I see, that hey, you know, I think it's about, what do you think about me transitioning on a job? And she wrote me a quick letter, you know, kind of explaining it in terms for my employer, and went to her office, and you know, kind of told her, you know, you probably know I've been noticing changes with me, and like my voice dropping, probably facial hair and stuff like that. And she had said that you're perfectly fine working here. Everybody likes you, and stuff like that. And what they did with me is that I had made a point to her that it's going to probably be a problem with bathrooms, because in the back where I work, there's a men's room that has one stall, and I think two to three urinals. And there's also 2 single stall women's bathrooms, one in which was a unisex bathroom in the past, which they converted to a women's bathroom. They ended up taking that bathroom that was unisex before and making it, again, a unisex bathroom, which I have to use. So, but there are people that lose their jobs each and every day because of their wanting to live their lives as authentically as they can possibly.
Chris and Dawn, you have children, correct? What do your children call you now, Chris? I mean, they call you Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris, mom,
I'm mom, she's mom,
Yeah, well, I just
Yeah.
wondered if they still
the
call her.
grandkids is Grandma Chris,
and Meme.
and it's,
And what?
But Meme, which is French for grandma.
grandkids couldn't care less.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Get on the floor, play with them, give them love, and that's all they're interested in.
We were visiting them, just a little funny story, and we were at the park, and the youngest one just turned 5, and he was 3 at the time. This other little 3-year-old girl comes running over and points her, "You're a boy!" And our grandson got in her face and said, "That's my grandma Chris, and don't you forget it." They did it 2 or 3 times.
I don't know why bathrooms remain such a big issue. I work with kids and who are transitioning young. And, you know, to me, why the schools and anybody place gets in this big uproar about which bathroom you're gonna use, makes no sense to me. I mean, if you were having a problem in the bathroom before, you should have taken care of it. Just because a person of another, supposed another gender, one who does not look like another gender, comes into your bathroom, that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, but it is. It's like there's this tremendous fear. But I have to say that when I transitioned here, I was very careful not to use the men's room downstairs for a long time, for both myself and for the guys that who knew me as a female. That it seemed like, you know, that would be pushing the envelope a little bit too far and too quick to, you know, to expose. I didn't want to see them that way. Let's put it that way. You know, and now I just get hysterical. Everybody up against the wall. Why? You know. Anyway, but don't get me on men's bathrooms. But now it's not an issue. It's like, you know, all right, guys. Now we all have to get over this one, and I'm going to live this way. But there has to be a certain amount of give and take and respect, I think, and I was able to do that here. And in lots of places you're not, so that's part of the problem.
I think you bring an important point in that one, and it's us as a community and as a church. We don't have a designated bathroom. Well, we have few bathrooms in the back there, but I think that in order to be the inclusive church that we are, I think one of the process of education is to designate so that the transgender community knows that there is, I don't know if that is necessary or not, but that was not necessarily my question. My question is this. I think
You can go for it, sweetie.
We actually do have a designated bathroom.
okay, I didn't know that.
You don't know about it because it's kind of hidden away. What's the gender neutral?
Gender neutral.
Okay.
Normally the door is open. When you come in the back door, and you come through that little hallway, and then you come through another set of doors, and you've got our pictures there, and you turn this way to the
Okay.
right. If you turn to the left, the sacristy is down there.
Yeah.
There's also a bathroom down there.
Okay.
That's the gender neutral bathroom. So we
No.
have one, for people who know that it's there. Anybody can use it, really, but it's gender neutral, so. There is a sign that says
There's a sign in the door.
which means anybody can use it, but oftentimes, you know, if a
But just-
transgender person is specifically having a problem, and they're new to us, and they're feeling a little uncomfortable about what bathroom to use, you can say to them, as long as you're uncomfortable, we do have a gender neutral bathroom and it's down there, so.
So that's good
So they can
information
be
to know.
comfortable, yeah, so they can be comfortable.
Can I
Now,
just
the
make-
question is this.
Okay, can I make one comment on what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah.
I just want to tell everybody here that I appreciate, and I thank everyone here. I use the ladies' bathroom no ifs, ands, or buts, there's no questions, whatever. It shows who we are here as a community. It doesn't make any difference. That's what we hope to strive, doing something like this, so that we're just like everyone else.
Now, the
Okay.
question is, one of the misunderstandings that sometimes we have in the transgender community is, and I don't know if I am right or wrong on this one, but there are transgenders that are not necessarily gay. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, let's identify ourselves up here. What are we?
I'm a straight transgender male to female.
Okay.
I'm straight.
I'm a transgender, I'm a lesbian, I've always loved women, and that's who I married as a man, and that's who I'm with as a woman.
I'm queer. That's how, I mean, it just, to me, that, I mean, it, you know, I'm in love with my wife, I have no problem with that. If my wife wasn't around, I have no idea. But she's here. Yes, I see you, Lenny.
I think of myself as a heterosexual male, so.
Well, and I'm a gay man, but if I were transgendered, since I've thought about it so much, I would say that I would be gay or be straight. I'd still be interested in men if I were to make that transition.
Renee?
Renee?
I've been a cross-dresser ever since I was 17. And my problem was never in Texas which bathroom you went to. As long as you were dressed appropriately and you went to the mall and you went shopping and you used a separate dressing area, which was just down the line and nobody said anything. And also, in the bathrooms, it didn't matter whether you went into the males or the females because there were stalls. And stalls means privacy. Look at the handicapped people, you know, disabled, or they use a stall. Why? Because they want the privacy. And that's the thing that I always use in Texas. If I was dressed as a woman or a girl, whatever, I went into the girls' bathroom. I did my makeup, I did whatever. But you know, if I wasn't dressed, then I went into the males. And the only reason, I mean, I'd stand up and pee either one. You know, if I had to do number 2, I'd sit down. When you're sitting there and someone looks underneath, you either see pantyhose or pants. So, anyway, I wanted to share that with you.
Kathy?
Kathy?
Well, I wanted to go back to the other point about, so years ago I went to a transgender forum, and that was the first time that someone explained to me the difference between sexual orientation or identity and gender orientation and gender identity. So maybe you can take a shot at that.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, one is about how you perceive your inside self. To me, am I a male or am I a female? What is my soul and who am I? And the other is who I'm attracted to, I want to sleep with, and have sexual relationships or intimate relationships with. And they don't have to go together, or some people, you know, they're all over the board. So you know, it's still that same spectrum whether within the trans community as there is within the gay or the hetero community. There's no problem there.
Go ahead, Shirley.
I personally have a problem with the necessity of all the labels. I am Shirley Townsend, and I'm everything that it takes to be Shirley Townsend. You know, as far as my gender goes, I'm definitely a woman. I definitely like women, and I like it the way it is. But I don't understand, you know, I have difficulty, let's put it that way, of understanding the need for the labels. Pardon me, I don't mean to offend anyone.
No. Stephanie?
I like to answer that. My sister has a hard time with what I've done with myself, and I have a hard time, she has a hard time getting the pronouns correct and also my past history. And I said to her, well, when you got married, you changed your name from Susan to Xana. You want everyone to call you Xana. Your last name went from Nichols to Richards. I said, how about I call you Susan Richards from now on? She said, oh no, it's legally Xana Nichols, or Xana Richards. I said, well, my name is illegally Stephanie Nichols now. What's the difference? You want to have the respect of going by your new name. I'm saying I'm expecting the same of you. What's the difference?
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you.
Society puts us in male, female.
I'm a little lost, maybe, I'm not, definitely not,
It's
got my answer yet.
It's a community-wide problem. It's not just the trans community. I mean, we are already separated from mainstream society, but yet we have the bears, we have the chubby chasers, we have the drag queens, we have the twinkies. I mean, we have, within our own community, we have created so many labels for ourselves. That's like the whole GLBT thing. When that came out, it was like, we're all gay. Why do we have to have 5 initials for who we are? So, but it's our own community. Yeah. Yeah.
So then it matters what
How
order
about
they
bad
go.
hats?
That-
Fruit flies, all right.
On the subject of, how do you know what you are, or how do you explain whether you're gay or you're whatever you are? I had asked that question of Liam, when she was Julia. And she said, quite simply, my gender is about how I consider myself. Sexually, it's who I love. And one has nothing to do with the other. I mean, you can be any combination of those things. And the other thing about labeling, I think a lot of the younger generation have thrown labels right out of the window. They don't want to be considered anything. But I do believe that as an adolescent, it's really important in your own mind to identify who you are. You need something. And sometimes that's self-imposed. And I also believe that if you are older and you are questioning whether you are authentic or whether you need to be something else, you also need a label to start to help yourself identify who you are. It's a personality kind of thing more than just a label for label's sake.
I have a real important question.
All
My
right.
question to everyone is, do
Stand
you
up
feel
here.
welcome here?
Amen.
And if you don't feel welcome, is there anything more we can do to make you
Great
feel
question.
welcome?
I should have prefaced what I said with the fact that when I met Barbara, okay, Barbara's the first woman I've ever met. When I met her, all of a sudden all the bells and whistles and everything was going off. And I thought, oh my word, there's things I'm thinking that I don't think I'm supposed to be thinking. And I started trying to do all these things by being a little bit butch. By carrying around and opening the doors and taking out the garbage and doing all this stuff. And then one day it dawned on me, it didn't fit. There's parts of me, none of that fits. You know, she doesn't take out the garbage, I still do that.
How did you say that part fit?
But there was things about me that wasn't working into my new persona, or what I was forcing myself to do.
As a world, we're very binary. The world is a very binary place. Even computers run on 0 and 1. Everything related to computers is 0 and 1. And if you, I know there have been times when I've had women go, when I go into a women's bathroom. Because all, and when I'm not wearing something quite as tight as this, very loose, short hair, tall, people think I'm a man before they'll think I'm a woman. And so I get weird reactions from sometimes. And in fact, before I go into ladies' rooms in a place where I'm not familiar, if I'm wearing a hat, I'll take it off, because I wear hats a lot. I'll take, Chris, at Orlando, I become like a different person, because I take off my hat, and I it's not about my being embarrassed, it's about the other person being embarrassed. To think that, oh my God, there's a man going into the women's room, and I don't want them to be embarrassed. So I do this thing for them, not for me, because I know exactly who I am. But it's very binary. Little children. I've had little children in the metro in Washington. Is that a boy or a girl? Pointing at me, you know, and I just let it go. And I know boys are to define it what the answer is. You know, let them figure it out, because they're sort of like, well, I'm not sure. That's really cool. But I really do think that it's about how you perceive yourself. And we are more than binary. We are, as a human being, we are very complex. And I don't think any of us would want to be put in a little box that says this about you. And I'm lucky that I was not raised about boxes, but I was allowed to be who I was becoming, and so it didn't matter. You know, male, female. I used to have in seminary. I had a nameplate on my door. There was a place where you could put your name if you wanted to. So for the longest time, as I started to come out to myself, I found this Latin words, and so I created a little thing and put it in the thing that said tertium quid, which means something of a third kind. Because I didn't quite fit everybody else's categories. I was myself, you know. And so, yes, I'm male. Yes, I'm female. Well, it's fluid. I mean, it's fluid. I think of myself as female, although I have to wear men's clothes a lot because that's what fits. You know, men's clothes are what fits. It's hard for me to find, because I have long arms and long legs, it's very difficult for me to find women's clothing that fits. So I've been wearing men's clothing for a very long time.
I have a closet.
There doesn't mean that. You have more dresses than I do. But I am who I am, take me or leave me. Take me or
Let's answer Ken's question.
To answer Ken's question, get back to that since we're dealing with the church and everyone here. We came here in February 2011. Our biggest thing, we had a list of places to go because we didn't want to go somewhere where you pay admission, sit down, shut up. And that's not us, as most of you know. So we came here in 2011. We sat there. This gentleman says, "Ladies, this your first time here?" Yes. So he gave us a little rundown what's going on, and we've been here since. Don says, we ain't going anywhere else. To show what happens here is look at the difference that we have here today.
Yeah.
I think that this community has been remarkable in its stepping up to the plate and genuinely showing appreciation for the trans community, not just acceptance. To me, that's sort of the lowest level of connection, but appreciation of who we are. And we realized that one of the things we wanted to do was share more of who we are, so that it's based on some information, not just based on being kind Christian folk, genuinely accepting, but have some idea of what's going on for us, so.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to stand up because many of you already know me. My name is Matria Jones. I've been with the church for almost a year now. I love it. Everybody's been very kind. I love the sermons. They pick me up. Maybe I should have joined the transgender ministry or whatever, but I didn't because I don't consider myself transgender. I consider, if you want to get legal, I consider myself a woman with a transsexual history. Okay? But that's history. I finished my transition 10 years ago. I live as a woman. This is as pretty as I'm going to get. high as my voice is gonna get, and I don't wanna sound like squeaky whatever, so I did this to be me. I've become me. I'm very happy, and I appreciate you all having me here. And then I do have a question. You use the word queer a lot. I don't understand what that means. Gay, lesbian, I don't understand what queer means. I don't understand the
May I
difference.
answer that one? We had our dean of women in college was this tiny little lady, little white gloves and a little hat and everything. And she would get up in front of the class and she'd say, "Now isn't that queer?" And I always took offense because I thought she's talking about me. But to her, it meant odd. It's different. Isn't that queer? So, you know, to me, that started having meaning that I wasn't that bad off. It was just I was different.
I guess for me to say that is part of my way of saying it. One, I don't want to label myself. I mean, I have a friend who says, okay, I'm a man of transgender experience, which I do like. I like that phrasing. Polyamorous, and he goes on and he, does all of the labels. Well, it's sort of like, okay, and that means something to people when they hear it. But to most people, it's sort of like, I'm queer. Ask me what day, what time, whatever. Might give you a different answer. And I don't want to be in that box that if I have to on a survey, I put down I'm male. Because that is how I most identify and most feel. And I agree with you that in a sense, I think some people the transition goes on forever, but I think for some of us, it does, it sort of is a completed kind of thing, and you proceed in your life as a male, as a female, if that's how you're identifying, and there isn't a need for any further labeling of what is perhaps your past. I might be, if I was in a different position in life, that might be what I would choose, and there are many people who do. It's just, Oh, first here, okay, and then Jennifer.
Just on a couple things. As far as restrooms, I wish we would catch up to Europe, because it's so strange. When you're at a concert, you have this long line of women out of the women's bathroom and a short line, and you basically finally get a lot of women saying, "That's it, we're going into the men's room." So I like it when they do that, because it's, who cares?
That's
You
been
just
happening
need.
in gay bars.
Yes, yes. As far as labels, I long for the day where you're just a human being, and if you care to get more involved, then ask those questions. And the reason why I picked to be on this ministry, because when I was first in social work, we had a transgender person that worked for us, and everybody in that office treated that person so cruelty, it broke my heart. So I got the time to know April, and I asked her questions, and I learned that she used to be a man. She was married to a woman. They had 2 children. And when she came out to his wife and children, they totally forsaken what she was able to me. So I asked further questions, and it was like, what we were saying up there. Here was a straight man who was married to a woman. Now that April was a woman, she still loved women, so she went from straight to a lesbian. And so basically I just wanted, anything that I could do, because I liked when you said trans, that we all kind of what we're talking about. None of us, even straight people, don't fit in a box. And it's not fun when you're made fun of. Nobody likes that when we're talking about respect today in church. So I just want to say it's a big honor to join this committee.
Thank you. Carmela? And then
I'm not done, but I'm proud to be here with all you gay people.
so I'll just continue to be who I am, but I enjoy being in the church.
I'd never be called on. No, I don't know if this was said before I came in a bit late, but the courage that it must take to be up there, and some of you are more familiar with talking in front of people than others, but thank you for your courage to be able to answer questions this openly, be this honest about yourselves. I don't think, I'm not even trans, I don't think I could get up there necessarily and answer questions about some of those inner issues. My question, and I'm glad that we're not identifying ourselves always as labels. I wouldn't want to be called, the depressed Jennifer, or the overweight Jennifer, or I'm Jennifer, and I hope people love me for who I am. And this church has taught me that. It touches me deeply that we're loved for who we are and not what we look like or anything else. My question was psychologically and spiritually, and I know those things intertwine. How has your experience, and you can pick any part of that you want, how has that affected you psychologically and spiritually?
That's a big question.
Good question.
Yeah, I'll take part of it. Go for it. To answer your question, Jennifer, I'm going to touch on a little bit on the psychological part of it. And for me, like probably about middle school, high school age, growing up, I was starting to get really depressed. Later on in high school, I was starting to get so bad that I was constantly thinking about suicide. I would literally think it pretty much occupied most of my day, to where I would think of, okay, what do I have on me that I could possibly end my life with? And it got so bad that I was, I think in 2004, my mother and I had worked with each other at Cracker Barrel, and right around my senior year of high school, my mother had noticed a big difference with me one night, and she had thought to herself that, oh my God, there's something really wrong. That she had called the very next morning, called my school, and had talked to one of the APs, which is one of the assistant principals over at my school, and later that afternoon I had got called down, and she ended up saying that my mom had called and that she's very, very worried about me, and that she had thought I was going to end up committing suicide, which I really didn't have much of a plan, but I knew I was pretty much at my breaking point, and since then, every once in a while, has come up that, different stresses and different things that would have ended up wanting to commit suicide. Because there's so much stress of people view me as female. Even to this day, certain people that I know, I trust, and love dearly still put me in this small little box that I am female, when that is not who I really am. So I hope that kind of...
Yes, it does. Thank you very much for encouragement.
This is for Zach and Jada, because I know they're the youngest ones up there. What?
Jake's offended.
How did your parents take this transition?
When my parents first found out that my dad disowned me, and later on, throughout the transition, he had come back and accepted me in my life. On the other hand, about my mom, she still struggles with this whole thing because she's used to having a son and not a daughter.
For me, because of my history with my dad growing up, my dad wasn't really in my life up until I was 18. Because again, my mother, she pretty much forced my dad out of my life for various reasons. I have still to this day don't know, but I still dearly love my dad, and I talk to him often. I ended up coming out to my dad
Christmas Eve about 2 years ago.
Whoa.
Merry
Merry
Christmas,
Christmas.
Dad.
Yeah.
You've got a son.
Cause I ended up telling my dad that, hey, what do you know about transgenders and stuff, people who are trans and stuff like that? He said he doesn't know very much of it and everything else, and he said to me that he still loves me no matter who I am. So he still accepts me for who I am. He ain't really sure of it with me. He says hi, how you doing, stuff like that, kind of neutral stuff. As far as my mom, I don't really talk to her very much. I sent my mother a birthday card a couple years ago, trying to really piss her off. It didn't work. So I said, happy birthday, I love you, and also, by the way, I'm trans. Love you, Zach. Got a letter a couple weeks later. Good, I'm glad you're doing, you're happy and everything else, and I still do love you. But
Good.
Just as a side note, we are the fortunate ones who still have friends and family.
Especially here.
You know, you talk about them as young people. I had to tell my mother in her 90s, hi, your middle daughter is now your your oldest son, and she would go, and because I was so very clear at that point about who I was, we ended up having the most healing and wonderful relationship, because I said, this is about love, and we have to figure out a way through this, because I have to be who I am. And she struggled with it. She was loving and accepting, but we had the best conversations, and she said, but how do I introduce you? I said, that's up to you. I can't help you with that. I can only give you thoughts and suggestions, but calling me in, or this is my daughter, it's gonna look a little funny when I have facial hair. So finally, on one of our last visits together, she was, introducing me to people in her lunch area, and she said, this is one of my children. Cool. Yeah, however you figure it out, she figured it out. I mean, we have to give, and as Chris says, we are the lucky ones. We are the ones where our parents are still, or mine, were involved in what was going on, and were able to take it. My siblings, not so much, but hey,
Joel?
Can I be just transparent for just a moment?
Oh, no.
Might as well be.
Yeah, like things go happen.
I know, right? 4 years ago, a little over, I guess about 4 years ago, Ryan and I were out. Ryan's my partner here. And we were out at a little place that did not last long called Partners. Anybody remember Partners?
Yeah.
I know, it didn't last long. And so we were in there, and in comes this group of women. And I thought to myself, and I will be very I just love this, here we go. I am a male, and I'm going to be very transparent with you, so some of this may be a little difficult to hear. But so these women came in, and my first thought was, well, here we go. And if you've sat there, you go, I've never been that way, shame on you, because let's be honest. So, well, here we go. And they began to play pool, and they began to socialize and all this stuff. And, I'm a very, very quiet individual, so I thought, I might as well be involved in this just for a moment and see what's going on. And I began to sit around the side, and I had a little cocktail, and had a few prior. And all of a sudden, this little short woman decides to come talk to me, and did not respond to me the way that I thought that they would, and I refer to they, meaning that I was not in the right mind of where I'm at today. And this woman began talking to me as if she was who she was, talking to me as I am, and showed absolutely no prejudice to me. And I began to think there for a moment, okay, is this a woman, a real woman then? Because I thought in my mind this was a cross-dresser or a drag queen. Because I was so ignorant and had been ignorant. I mean, some of you know my story. I have not grown up in the gay lifestyle, and certainly didn't grow up near gay bars. And so, as the night went on, we talked more and talked more and talked more, and we left, and I got in the car. I remember telling Ryan, well, I just got my ass handed to me on the silver platter, because now I should have been more responsible in my own community. Now, fast forward 3 years. And I'm sitting in the choir, and I look out, and I see this short woman with this other short woman walking in the back of the church. And I thought, oh my gosh, is that who I think that is? And it's Chris and Dawn. And my stomach left me with shame. I felt shame that I had judged someone in my own community and did not understand, have the intelligence enough to get to know that person, to understand who they are. And I felt shame. And I thought, God, help me today that I change who I am in my heart, and I change who I am as a person. And I get to understand that I am no better than anyone else. And that if I don't know something, then I am ignorant, and I should learn more. And about a month later, I began saying hello to Chris again as Chris. And making it intentional that I was going to know her as her, and then to know Dawn as Dawn, and not as someone different. And about 6 months ago or so, I was in the social hall, thank you. And I'm sitting there.
And I shouldn't help you after what you did to me this morning.
I know. I was playing Magic. And Chris was there, and Chris and I were talking, and Chris said, you know, I'm going to this hairdresser, and this hairdresser is just not doing me right, blah, blah. And Chris at that time didn't know what I did. And so Chris, we were talking back and forth. I said, well, I'm a hairdresser. And what Chris doesn't know is that I didn't ask Chris to come be my client because I wanted Chris's money. I wanted to make right what I had done wrong. And I wanted to get to know Chris for who Chris was. And whatever I could do to make Chris feel like more of a woman for who she is. And Chris began coming and sitting in my chair along with Dawn. And boy, howdy did we go through some... It's come a long way, girl. What I have learned, as most of you have learned, is this is the most loving couple that I have ever met in my life. And these two people have allowed Ryan and I to ask them questions that none of y'all have the nerve enough to. And because I wanted to know. Because I want to be smarter and more intentional in who I am. And I find myself now, and I know Ryan has, because we've been in a situation not too long ago where we both were in this situation, where someone near us had said something smart about, or something they thought was funny about a transgender person, and you find yourself that moment having a little bit of anger. Let me tell you something, that anger is a good thing to have for a moment, because then you understand. That you're getting there to understand this is human lives of human people. I have a 5-year-old little girl that goes to the church that I was the worship pastor at, that can't figure all this out. But I bring her here with pride. And when she comes here, she knows everyone as an individual and not as labels, Shirley. Because I kind of feel you there. And I have to tell you something. To me, when I introduce these two, this is Chris and this is Miss Dawn. And I have to tell you something, and I'll tell it to you and to you. I love you for who you are and who you always have been. And I think for us that are sitting here today, we are more educated when we leave here today because of you, because of you, and because of you, and because of you and Jake, you are a little bit of a diva. Because of your beautiful wife, she snuck away from her hairdresser. And I have to tell you something. I have intentionally become friends. I'm going to keep on working on it with Jada, because I have sat there and I've watched her come in, and she sits down, and sometimes she looks so sad, don't look sad. And then sometimes she looks so happy. And I found myself realizing one thing. I am so thankful that I'm part of King of Peace Metropolitan Community Church.
Well, I think we've been sort of going for almost an hour. One more question, okay, Stephanie.
Can you tell what Two-Door is and what this church does annually in November?
Two-Door is Transgender Day of Remembrance. Its basic focus internationally is on the violence of trans folks that have been murdered throughout the past year. And unfortunately, most of them are murdered just because they're trans. Rarely are the crimes even investigated, often sneered at by the police. I mean, it's a pretty horrible scene. And we've added a little piece to that, honoring those deaths, but we also want to honor and use it as an opportunity to share the courage and the appreciation for the folks that are here, and give up a little piece of education as a part of that.
November 18th, Transgender Day Remembrance usually held on the 20th of November. There's ceremonies and different stuff. Last year, it just so happened Sunday was November 20th, we did something here. And this year, we're gonna do it on November 18th on a Sunday due to...
It's a Sunday.
It's Sunday, and the demand and the suggestions and ideas that we receive from the people here and members of the congregation, we're gonna do it on the 18th. It's a work in progress, but it will be done and outlined before Candace goes on her cruise. So she won't have to worry about it when she comes back. But we will have something different, maybe a little different focus on the people that we will be highlighting as far as the deaths, thanks to suggestions we received from here, and we just hope you're all there.
One of the things I'd like before, we have some handouts for you, just some information. We also have a handout of our ministry. We could start passing those around. If there is any interest in further exploration, which we hope there is, in what form would you like it to take? Would you be willing, would a class, on exploring gender in the Bible, or something like that be of use to this church community? I think so, but the last time it was offered, it was just a transgender ministry that showed up, so, which was fine. But, we don't know what the next step would be. Love and appreciation is one thing, but I think we still need some more education, and we haven't barely begun to touch the topics that are available to share with you about what happens in a transgender person's life. So, either let me know, or Chris know, or somebody know what the next step you'd like to see.
Yeah. The box that was downstairs for questions for here, you can still put questions in there, which is something we can use for further presentations that we're gonna do. Also, any suggestions you have. As you all know, we have classes that we present at King of Peace. We can offer anything that you want, but is it something that you're gonna come to? What we're looking for is suggestions and ideas of something that you would like to see in a format or in a presentation, whatever, that you'd like to come to. Not something, I'm the council of the ministry, or I'm the board, I have to go to these things. No, we want you to want to come so we can all explain. We all learn from each other. And that's what we're gonna be looking for.
I also need to put in a plug for Transaction Florida, which some of you have seen around. It was founded in, I believe, 2001 by trans women. At that time, it was known as Forge. We were given it, or 2003. We were given it by these trans women who had sort of had done their bit. They were tired, and there were a bunch of trans men who are wanting to we had gotten together to start an advocacy group. So we have since changed its name. It's for everyone. It's Transaction Florida. We do events around the community trying to raise money because one of the things that we have is a medical fund to help many of our people try to get some of the surgeries that they need, which aren't covered, of course, by insurance or anything like that. And the other thing is we spend money on, advocacy work. We're the ones that were able to get the driver's license law changed so that we were able to use a letter to change a gender. We're trying to get even more change. We're working on the birth certificate issues right now. So we're in close with Equality Florida trying to, get these things done. But we're the only one in the whole state, really, that is working on it. And so any support you can always give us, we'd always appreciate that.
Jake, is Transaction limited to Florida, or is it?
Yes, this is ours. Yeah, there are other organizations in other states.
Because I think I had mentioned to you before that my son met someone, a young person that's struggling, and didn't know what direction to point them in New Jersey.
Okay, so well, and that kind of a thing that he could, contact Michael Keefe is our executive director, but I'm on the board. Well, any one of us could help him look up and figure out what goes on in New Jersey, because we're used to doing that kind of thing, trying to help people wherever they are in their journey. Political announcement.
All right, I know a lot of people here in the Tampa Bay area contribute to HRC, Human Rights Campaign. One of the issues, and I sent them a letter not too long ago as a trans woman saying, why should I support you? What have you done for me? There are some things that have been done more or less behind the scenes and odds and ends, but whenever legislation or programs and stuff comes up, it's because of society. And it's like, well, we're gonna do the gay and the lesbian and the bi, but you guys will catch you later. Well, a lot of people were surprised that I did write the HRC to ask them the question, and all that you can think about when you're making your donations or whatever, it'd be nice if you put a little word in there saying, what about in these things that we had last, like the fake T, we talk about the GLBT, but when it comes down to action, it's the LGB. We're waiting. Some of us are tired of waiting, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're out in the community, Transaction, and different odds and ends, and it's time for them to step up, and for all of us to step up.
Personally, I think until they step up, that you could find some other organization that is inclusive of everybody, because that has been their stance since the year 2000, when Barney Frank and the National,
They're mellowing.
well, they're mellowing, but they ain't there yet, so as far as, until they're there, I don't support them.
Well, they have agreed that if ENDA, which is Ending Discrimination in Job, has gotten stopped every time, and the last time they had to take the trans off the trans rights out of that bill in order to hopefully get past this bill of employment discrimination or a lack thereof. This year, at least, people have agreed that they will hang in there, and trans will not be taken out. Everybody's rights will be, or not, and it looks like or not. No one's getting anything. But
And for a lot of former military, and most of the community has been or knows people. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was fabulous. It's a good start. However, there's still a piece missing down the line. Being worked on, but it's still somewhere that's there. So basically, as a trans person, you cannot serve in the military openly. However, if you're in Canada, Australia, Great Britain, and European nations, you're cool. But evidently, and Israel included, but in the US, we are, as the Pope said, talking about gay, lesbians, bi, transgender, we're all deficient. We're not born correct or whatever, but that's his thing.
No, I don't make junk.
Thank you very much.